Show here. Good morning. Thank you all so much for being here. I'm so glad to be here. I believe I'm a writer for many reasons. Because I was raised among a community of storytellers, because I was raised in my aunt's little community store where everyone came in and told stories, because I witnessed my family falling apart after the murder of my uncle and saw that stories needed to be written down to survive properly, because I was raised in a community and family of strong faith. And so I'll focus on that last one this morning. I've had an unexplainable faith for as long as I can remember, and I had a profound relationship with God from a very early age. Once, as a child, I was convinced that God was speaking to me. I was in my backyard playing on my metal swing set by myself. I spent lots of time alone by choice, sometimes not by choice. As I was swinging, a big wind came down the valley. And I was certain that this was God passing through. And I believe I heard God speak to me. I am here, the wind said. In that moment, I needed someone there with me. I had felt very alone, but suddenly I was with someone. Instead of telling somebody this had happened, I ran into the house and got out my little notebook where I wrote down everything. So you'll note here that being outside led me to going into write. Very similar to what you were saying. The natural world has always been my deepest spiritual connection. And being outside has always been my greatest impetus for creation, for writing. Lots of artists I know have had similar experiences. Perhaps some of us are artists because of our strict fundamentalist upbringings, and our wildly creative minds led to these encounters. Maybe as writers, we were doing what writers and artists are supposed to do. Hearing like an animal, seeing like a camera, feeling everything intensely, like an animal does. For this is the artist's great responsibility to listen, see, feel, smell, taste like an animal, to experience everything as intensely as possible, and then to report our findings to others. I want to pause here briefly to tell you that I'm immediately suspicious whenever anyone tells me that God has spoken to them and told them to do something. A whole lot of evil in the world has been framed this way. I was a child, and I was a child raised in a very strict evangelical fundamentalist church. But the point is that in my time of feeling alone, I felt as if someone was there. I also want to say that while I do identify as a Christian, I am often troubled by the way a lot of mainstream Christians act these days. I feel that my religion has been hijacked by a vocal, obnoxious lot who have politicized and even bastardized Christianity, turning it more towards nationalism than anything else. So often it does not reflect the values of Christ as I was taught. So more and more I call myself a person of faith instead. And this makes me want to explore issues like faith and religion and doubt even more in my writing, because we must never operate in a world of absolutes. More and more I think that we do. We put people in the category of saint and some in the category of monster, and that's that. Art must be the antithesis of that. Art has to explore the gray in between, the complexity. That's where the complexity lives, and the humanity. So art must never be absolutist. Art must insist on examining the complications of human beings and the world. Art is about the mystery, the wonder, and the awe. And that's why art is more important than ever, I believe. Because when we see people we love defending politicians who truck in fascism, we are tempted to be absolutists just as they are. It would all be so much easier if the people we disagree with were monsters. But the truth is, usually, that the people we disagree with the most vehemently on values are the ones we love and the ones we know to love us. That's what makes it more difficult. If they were all just monsters, we could just put them out of our lives and move on, and that'd be it. There would be no heartache about it. But there is heartache. That's the problem. For me, art has been a balm for that sadness, but it has also helped me to find some solutions, because empathy lives in books and poems. That does not mean that this isn't sometimes a struggle. Sometimes it's difficult for me to find the sacredness that exists in people vomiting hatred. But I believe in landing on love, even when people seek to harm me. So I've had to learn sometimes to love from afar. I've had to learn how to recognize the sacred parts of them while also issuing boundaries. I've had to learn that removing myself from situations does not mean I'm no longer the peacemaker. I've had to learn that it's not always fair to be the one put in the situation of being the bigger person when the other one is simply being mean-hearted. I want to love everyone, but that does not mean I have to be a doormat. And again, I turn to literature to help me with this. I appreciate a quote by the great writer Robert Jones Jr. that helps me to articulate my feelings on this the best. And he once wrote, "We can disagree and still love each other unless your disagreement is rooted in my oppression and denial of my humanity and right to exist." A passage from a novel that has been foundational for me is this one, from Marilyn Robinson's masterpiece, Gilead. I'm sure many of you know it. I hope you do. In Gilead, Robinson writes, "For me, writing has always felt like praying. You feel as if someone is there." And perhaps this is another reason I write, because I fear being alone, because I have a story to tell and I want others to hear it, not just myself. One of my favorite writers is Willa Cather, and she once wrote, "The prayers of all good people are good." This quote is somewhat of a mystery to me, but when thought on, I believe that one thing Cather's saying here is that anyone who strives to be good is therefore good. I also believe that one of the many functions of art is to make us better people. The act of making art makes us better people. The act of looking at, reading, hearing, experiencing art has the potential to make us better if we open ourselves up to it. And this could come in the form of books, music, paintings, films, a dance recital, many things. For me, it's always been literature. Art, by illuminating the truth, sheds light on how we can be better people. Nearly everything I ever learned about being a better person, I didn't learn in church. I learned from secular work, from secular books and poems. I'm thinking of novels like The Color Purple by Alice Walker, which taught me that the true path to God is to recognize that I may have the God of understanding and that God lives in everything. In that book, Shug Avery says, everything wants to be loved. Us sing and dance, make faces, and give flower bouquets trying to be loved. People think pleasing God is all God cares about, but any fool living in the world can see he's always trying to please us back. When you walk through the world every day, noticing everything, you are honoring God. And that is what any artist must do, I think, to be a truly great artist. There's no way an artist can walk through the day without seeing, hearing, feeling, smelling, tasting, and experiencing everything they can. It is not a great leap to make this part of one's own religiosity or better spirituality. And again, I want to emphasize that God can mean many different things to many different people. For me, it's the great mystery. That's the God of my understanding. Art teaches us to give thanks. Anne Lamott, the author of books like Traveling Mercies, Bird by Bird, many others, says that the two best prayers she knows are please, 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 and thank you, thank you, thank you. I have used both of these prayers many, many times, and they have been balms for me. Art can be a way of prayerful meditation, or just prayer, period. Art can be a way of being of service. Everything we do throughout the day can be a way of service to others, because the God of my understanding lives in all of us. William Blake said, "All that lives is holy," and Thomas Merton, whose name will be conjured many times during this festival, the Trappist monk who lived just south of here at the Abbey of Gethsemane, later popularized this notion by reshaping the quote a little bit to read, "Everything that is holy." And Merton had a revelation or an epiphany right here in Louisville, just about 3 or 4 blocks away. I hope you will seek it out. There is a state historical marker there, and it's, I believe, I've read that it's the only historical marker in the United States that is about a religious experience. And so he wrote about it. "At the corner of 4th and Walnut, in the center of the shopping district, I was suddenly overwhelmed with the realization that I loved all these people, that they were mine and I theirs, that we could not be alien to one another even though we were total strangers. There is no way of telling people that they are walking around shining like the sun." And that is now the corner of 4th and Muhammad Ali. So we must strive to walk through the world treating everything as if it is holy, finding the awe and wonder in all of it. When we walk through our day as artists, seeing, hearing, feeling, tasting, smelling, everything like an animal, it is not a great leap to see that everything is holy and must be treated as such. The God of my understanding lives in everything, not just churches and chapels, not just in trees and leaves of grass and flowers, but even in, especially in the secular holy, as I call it, the leads of pencils, the lenses of cameras, the tips of paintbrushes, the rich alto of a singer, the curve of a sculptor's cut, in books, poems, music. The God of my understanding shows its face in the faces of my neighbors and friends, of strangers that I'm just meeting, my family members, and the people in line at the post office. The God of my understanding is hovering everywhere, waiting for us to take note of the sacred, to have awe and wonder. And for me, that has always been found most in the secular holy, in the arts. Thank you.